So when we do this, we want to make sure we scout the coronal 2/3. We want to make sure we do that with a viscous chelator. Once this is done, we want to complete our coronal modification with the orifice modifier. After you've done a shaping of the coronal segment, you then want to make sure you irrigate, rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, confirm your working length with your apex locator. Then, if you would like, remember to rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, and confirm patency. Patency traditionally is no more than 1 millimeter past your working length. This is normally obtained with a 10 file. Remember, my mentor always said, you never instrument patency. Now, to me, the first time I heard that, it was a little odd, but the thing he was telling us is, when you confirm patency, think of a slide. You don't want an envelope of motion because you run the risk of actually tearing the apical constriction. So he always told us it should be a consistent linear motion rather than an envelope of motion. Once you've done this, rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, and then confirm a true glide path. And this is done with the TruNatomy glide path instrument. It has a white band, and these are available in 21, 25, and 31 millimeter lengths. Once you've confirmed your glide path, then rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, recapitulate, irrigate again, and then start your shaping objective. Start with the prime instrument. This is also available in 21 millimeters, 25 millimeters, and 31 millimeters. Its tip diameter is 0.26, and it has an average, a V of 0.4 taper. Once this is done, it's time to obviously think about your obturation objectives. Once this is done, you now complete whatever that is using size verifiers or cones, and then complete your disinfection process prior to obturation. However, I want to go over a few key notes. People always ask me about getting into canals. People ask about, what about calcified canals? One of the things we need to realize is it really calcified? Is it an obstruction? Or is it actually a dentin triangle over the orifice? Our recommendation is always start with the smallest file practical. What does that mean? 1, use a viscous chelator. 2, not only the smallest diameter tip, D0, but also remember you have better tactile awareness and you have better access into posterior teeth when you use a 21 millimeter hand file as your first scouting instrument. So if you were to look at an orifice of a mesial root, a lower mesial root of a number 30, if you think about that, when you come in with your hand file, you need to come from the distal in a mesial direction. Now, if we think about what the angle is coming out of a canal, an angle is made of 2 arrays. So if you take the superior ray, which makes up an angle, and you project that out as a vector, you'll see the farther you go out, even though the angle hasn't changed, the higher you go. Well, if you use a 25 millimeter file, your hand has to be higher and is going to be closer to the maxilla, the maxillary teeth, when you actually try to come into that in the appropriate angle. But when you use a 21 millimeter instrument, you're coming down that angle, that ray, and you're actually, believe it or not, coming in easier because that ray is now shorter. So this here will help you gaining access into difficult cases that aren't obviously with an orifice standing straight up or actually have curvatures in the coronal segment. So let's go over that quickly. So we scout with our 10 file with a viscous chelator, but one of the key things we want to do is briefly remember, when you're using a hand file, it's a good idea to use a viscous chelator. Once this is accomplished, you want to make sure you rinse the chamber and irrigate the canal. Now you want to leave, as the video shows, irrigant in the canal as your lubricant, using the TruNatomy irrigation needle. It's okay if you leave irrigant in the pulp chamber as well. Remember, this here is really passive irrigation that's going to take place during your instrumentation. Next, you're going to grab the orifice modifier, purple handle, and of course stopper. You're going to run it at 500 RPMs. The next thing you're going to do is think of waves of motion. 1, 2, 3, out. You're going to do this and make sure that you always clean the debris from the flutes with a 2x2 with alcohol. The advantage to using a 2x2 with alcohol is it not only cleans away the debris, but it also evaporates so you can see the condition of your file, whether there's elongation of flutes or unwinding, as many of you call it. Remember then, you want to make sure you rinse the chamber and irrigate the canal before going to obtain your working length. So once we've completed our coronal modification, we then want to rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, and then, of course, obtain our working length. This is confirmed with our electronic apex locator, and as Shabahang said, 96% accuracy back in 1996. The next thing we want to do after we confirm our working length, we want to make sure that we rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal. Once we've now obtained a coronal modification, our working length, and confirm patency, we want to confirm our glide path. And we want to make sure we have a mechanical glide path with something that's flexible, and therefore the TruNatomy glide path instrument. This confirms a centered glide path that your shaping instrument will use. After using this, it may take approximately 2 or 3, or maybe 3 or 4 in difficult cases or curved cases, 3 sets of 3. Key. The next thing we want to do is we want to rinse the chamber and irrigate the canal. Once you have your glide path, you are now ready for that shaping. And as we said earlier, you always want to start your shaping objective with the prime instrument. It has a red band and a red stopper and has a tip, as mentioned earlier, of 0.26. Now, using this also at 500 RPMs and a torque, obviously 1.5. We want to make sure that we do this in a nice, easy, flowing motion, no pecking, no stalling. We want to make sure it's nice and smooth. Once you look at this, you're going to see more debris in your chamber than previous. So what I want you to do is remember, always rinse the chamber and irrigate the canal. In certain cases where you have a small radius, okay, with a great angle, in those cases you want to make sure that you evaluate it and see if you are going to complete with the prime or drop down to the 20. But remember, as I said earlier, once you use the 20, you're actually creating a more predictable glide path at a larger size, and the prime will probably follow over 95% of the time. And then again, now go through, rinse the chamber, irrigate the canal, activate your irrigants as you do, follow your disinfection protocols that you use in your office, and then after that, obviously, prepare for obturation. So, as I mentioned earlier, we have a few instruments in case you want, for larger canals, buccolingually, or for those cases that have severe curvature. We hope you like this complete system. So, in review, 1, this really does help. It doesn't matter if you believe in a constricted endodontic cavity, CEC, or a traditional endocavity. TruNatomy is flexible. It's there for all your needs, to fill in all the gaps that you require clinically in that situation. It's run as a low torque instrument. Never brush or peck. Remember, it's there in all cases, not just, okay, in small access. But the orifice modifier helps you create a coronal glide path, which sets you up for success in the apical segment. We have to remember to always use the prime as our first shaping instrument. Please, no matter what, don't use the small to go to the prime. Always start with the prime, and in many cases, that will be the only instrument you require in your shaping pack. After fitting your cones, follow your standard irrigation protocols you use in your office. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed the system. One of the things we are excited and cannot wait to hear your feedback. Your feedback is key to the success and the changes we make in future instruments and things that obviously will always complement our practices. Thank you again, and please, we look forward to talking to you soon.